Elizabeth with Random Conversations with me, Elizabeth, live on Instagram. Yay! We are live and we have a great show. Hey, Lex, Talk! Oh gosh, don't watch for the whole thing. Now I'm going to be nervous. But yeah, this is Random Conversations with me, Elizabeth. This is a podcast recorded live on Instagram. We have a great guest today. We're going to be speaking to sex therapist DeAndrea Blaylock-Johnson in a little bit. So, some of you know, I've been talking to or interviewing sex workers just because, sex is on the mind currently. Sex is on the mind right now, if I'm going to be honest, for me. And I know I've been freaking out in this tiny studio by myself, anxious, lonely, and I'm single, and it sucks. So I wanted to talk to a sex therapist or a therapist just to talk about what this is doing to us sexually. What are the effects of this? I see now that people are worried about masturbating too much, or maybe porn watching has gone up. Sex work has gone up. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hopefully we will have her join me soon, but yeah, yay, she's here. So I'm going to bring her on in, y'all. I hope you're ready to talk, Sankoba. Let's see, let me bring you in here. I'm excited. Hey.
Hello. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey. Good. I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you for taking your time out. I know you're doing things and you got stuff to do. So coming on my little tiny podcast, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, those who might join us later or watch this, by the way, I should say, everyone, follow me on my YouTube. I need some more subscribers. I'm new out here. Random Conversations with Elizabeth on YouTube. Follow. So, Miss DeAndrea Blaylock-Johnson.
Yes. Glad to be here.
How are you today?
You know what? I'm doing all right. It's been a busy day, but it's been a good day.
Yeah.
It's been a good day. How about you?
Anxiety, but that's always a constant, always in the background for me. I always want to ask, as a therapist, how do you take time out for yourself? Because, there's so many people kind of taking pieces of you. How do you keep whole?
I have to be intentional and purposeful with my me time. And so my no has gotten stronger over the past 4 years, I'd say. And so I used to be someone who would overcommit, and, anytime I could help, I would. If it was reasonable, within my power to do something, I'd say, sure, I'd do it. But after my husband passed away in 2016, my no got real strong.
Wow.
Yeah, and I learned to set those boundaries to really take better care of myself. So in addition to my no being strong, I am definitely intentional with doing things that make me feel good. So whether that is, I just took a walk, and I live in Ferguson, so it's a lot of hills in Ferguson. So
Ferguson.
Yeah. But it's a lot of hills in my area. It's a beautiful neighborhood, but yeah, them hills kick my behind. But it was good to be out and being in the fresh air.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that definitely make time for is, or just make a.
Oh, wait a minute. One second. It looks like we're breaking up a little bit. Breaking up just a tiny bit here. Hold on. You know what? I'm going to... What I'm going to do is I'm going to click off, and then I'm going to add you in. So just stay in the live, but I'm going to click you off and add you back in. And hopefully that works. All right. So I'm going to add her back in. Hopefully that works. Please, internet, work with me today.
All right.
Okay. Yay. Okay. All right. So yeah, you're saying you take a walk and.
Yes, and my girl Lex is here. Hey, boo. Yes, booty completely on fire because I did leg day yesterday, and them heels on top of legs. It was just a bad situation, but definitely being outside and then mindfulness is one thing that definitely helps. Really allowing myself to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. A lot of times when people are talking about mindfulness, they lean toward the end that discusses relaxation, and that's incredibly important. However, the other part of it is really sitting with acknowledgement of those not so comfortable feelings, whether it's sadness or anger or whatever it may be. So, yeah, those are some things that I'm doing.
Nice, because I always worry about you guys. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much. Okay. So with everything going on, pandemic, it's been a few months. People are spending a lot of time alone. I know I am. And I guess the question I have also is like, how much alone time is healthy? Because I always hear like, you got to learn how to spend time by yourself or you can't be with nobody, learn how to spend time. But I'm kind of like, okay, I've been by myself. How much more time do I need?
Yeah. We're a communal people. Community is incredibly important. And so not being able to be in close proximity to people is incredibly challenging. And so although with the various ways we have to connect, whether it's Zoom or whether it's, other media, it's not quite the same. So it's hard to say, how much time is too much time by yourself. But, it's hard to say just because we're in a pandemic and we're in a serious situation and a difficult situation. However, making sure that you find other ways to connect with people, with those that you love, whether it's social distance get-togethers or hangouts. Like one thing that I've been doing is hanging out in people's backyards. That's definitely been helpful.
See, that's nice. That is nice. I live in this tiny little studio in Chicago.
Okay.
There's no backyard.
Yeah.
I live right by the alley, so I just hear people all the time. I think my thing is before I was kind of insulating myself, especially with all the everything with race going on, all the police brutality. I was insulating myself, and it's probably not the healthiest. But I think it felt normal when everyone else was still outside, and now that no one it feels like, oh no, it just feels like, the walls can be closing in. And it seems like this thing is kind of like, for lack of a better term, like cock blocking everybody.
It is, COVID and being under quarantine, quarantine celibacy is a thing. Just because, it's not the safest to have new friends right now. That you are, having sex with. However, there are various things that you can do to try to keep yourself safe. But it's a hard time to have new friends right now, especially with cuffing season upon us.
Yes. Do you think? I feel like no. I just feel like this is going to be like an angry winter because it's cuffing season, but also people don't have enough money to visit their families like they used to, and they don't have enough money to buy presents like they used to. And there's no touching, no hugging. I'm like, are people going to explode? Like, what is going to happen especially with no sunlight either? Yeah.
And I think one important thing that I always remind people is that you can't control what happens, but you can plan for certain things. And so for people who know that they have a tendency to, whether they actually have seasonal affective disorder or they just notice some mood changes in the winter, try to find different ways to plan for that time. So whether that is getting the different lamps or lights or finding ways to make sure that you get sunlight when you can. Or just other ways of managing those emotions that you may be feeling. If you have seen a therapist in the past, maybe making a few appointments because this time is coming up.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can't control what's going on outside, but what you can do is try to make a plan for what's coming up, what we know is coming up.
That's a good point. I think even maybe, would you say sexually? So for someone who's single, like myself, I guess what could I be working on? Maybe sexually. I guess maybe getting to know myself better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Play.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I love to do and to tell people to do is something called pleasure mapping. And it's where it's an outline of your body. And there are a few different ways that you can do this. So you can either, if you're partnered, you can have, if you have access to like the really big butcher block paper, you can have someone to make an actual outline of your body. But if not, you can find a body outline online. And what you do is on this pleasure map, you have the opportunity to write out or draw out where you like to experience pleasure. And so for someone who has the blessing of singleness right now, doing this as an activity for yourself, like you can set it up where it may be a time of solo sex where you are exploring your body and figuring out what feels good, and then using this tool, this sheet of paper, to write down those different things. So using this opportunity to explore yourself and to really pinpoint your pleasure zones, not just for being with another person, but just for knowledge of self.
Trying to think, I'm like, I don't think I've ever really intimately figured out where my pleasure zones are. I feel like so. Just a little back story for me. So I joined this site called FetLife last year, and I went to some of their meetups and things, and it was an interesting experience for me because everyone there is very articulate with what they want sexually. And that was something I really needed to practice. Even as a grown woman, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to articulate how to touch me, or how I want to be touched. So yeah, that was an awesome experience, but I think a lot of people need to go through that and kind of push it. What do you think is the shame around talking about those things? Because I'll say, please follow. What are your pronouns, by the way? I've been
she, her.
Please follow her on Twitter because, oh my God, your Twitter page. There was so much on there, especially about Christianity and sex. I know that's what you specialize in, and it's just it was blowing my mind.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, my family is Caribbean, and so they're extremely religious, and so I'm like, oh my God, all these articles I wanted to send to them. But anyway.
Yeah. And what are your pronouns, please?
She and her. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, girl, look. We have so many hang-ups regarding sex related to shame that are gifted from Christianity. Well, and then I even want to rephrase that because it's not the teachings of Jesus, but it's really the ways in which Christianity was spread and infused with white supremacy and all of these other things that ended up othering any type of sexuality that wasn't cisgender, white, heterosexual. And so it filtered through hundreds of years of teachings, and this is what we have now, whereas Black women in the 21st century have an issue or have this shame around our genitals, have this shame around masturbating, have this shame around enjoying sex. But I like to think about Psalm 139, which talks about how I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And if God created me and he also created my clitoris, and the only purpose of the clitoris is to experience pleasure, then God intended for me to experience pleasure.
Yes.
That's just what makes sense to me.
Yes. Yeah, why does it? I always wonder why it stops at that body part. Like everything else, what did you put? Freedom. Was it? It was somewhere. Oh, freedom in Christ includes pleasure and sex.
Yes, absolutely. Jesus died on the cross for that too. Um,
Yes.
I think that a lot of times we put so many limits on what freedom looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And really exploring what that freedom is, what that finished work of the cross is. Do we allow ourselves to experience that freedom through having good sex?
Yeah, I once heard someone say, like, oh, you're kind of worshiping God when you have sex.
Oh, yeah, like, absolutely.
I told my mother that. She was like, blasphemous.
How, Sway? Look, and I love that idea, because if we are told that our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit, we just go into church. I mean, you know what I'm saying? If I am a creation, if I am Imago Dei, in the image of God, and my body holds the Spirit of God, and worship, so like, when you break down the etymology of the word worship, it's really assigning worth to something. And since we're talking in a Christian context, and so the scripture says that you shouldn't worship any gods above the one true God, right? However, it doesn't say you shouldn't worship your partner. It doesn't say that you won't be assigning worth to other things in your life, but it says not to put them on the same plane as God. So, yes, sex is an act of worship, because when you break down the etymology of the word worship, it means to assign worth to.
I love it. This is amazing. So how did you, just a brief, summary, how did you get started in this, and also incorporating spirituality in your practice?
Yeah, so I had a random conversation with my line sister walking down campus in undergrad. We went to St. Louis University, and she was a psych major. I was a social work major. And I had this idea I knew I was going to go to grad school. I knew I was going to, at that time, I think I knew I was going to get a master in social work. And we were just talking about our future plans. And I said, I think I want to do marriage and family therapy. And our school, St. Louis University, had a joint Master's of Arts in Pastoral Studies and MSW program. And I just had in my mind, this is what I'm going to do. And then she said, well, I'm going to do sex therapy. I said, what? You going to do? What is that? And so, from that conversation, it kind of piqued my interest, and I looked into it. Now, I am a granny millennial, so when I was in college, I learned how to use the Google when I was in undergrad.
Okay.
So I went to the Google and and looked up, like, what is sex therapy and all of that. And so I just had it in the back of my head. We actually went to grad school together at Washington University in St. Louis for our master's in social work degrees. And we took a intro to, it was a human sexuality class. And the teacher, who's still a mentor in the field, she really just opened my eyes to the idea that, okay, this is a real living, breathing person who's a sex therapist. And she talked about her work, and it was like, okay, this is intriguing. Maybe. So then I went to a sex therapist conference for the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists in 2006. I graduated from grad school in 2005, went to this conference in 2006, and my mind was like, that emoji with the brain, like the hair pop, like that was me. I was like, what did I get myself into? I'm clutching imaginary pearls. I'm like, because I grew up United Methodist, and then like around the time of undergrad, I hung around a lot of folks who were in Pentecostal denominations. And so I had a lot of very interesting messages regarding sex and sexuality, specifically like from the purity movement and everything. So sifting through all of that, and then I come to this conference, and I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know. And so I still put it on the back burner, but I started this blog called Sex for the Saints, where I talked about spirituality and sexuality, specifically from a Christian perspective, and went back to the conference 5 years later and then decided, okay, I am going to work towards the certification of being a sexuality and relationship therapist. So
Nice.
that's what got me there. What took me so long was because I did not see very many reflections of myself within the field.
Ooh, yes.
That first conference I went to in 2006, I saw one other Black woman there, and I can't remember her name, but we saw each other from across the room. It was like, sis, we gonna hang. and like we didn't keep in touch after the conference, but like it was just like, you the one, and we gonna be here together and keep each other safe. So when I went back in 2011, I saw more people who looked like me, but there still aren't a lot of Black sexuality and relationship therapists, specifically that have the training that's approved through ASEC to be certified. So,
wow. And do you see predominantly more Black couples?
I do. Most of my clients are Black. I work with individuals and those in all types of relationships. I would say probably 75% of my clients are Black or people of color. I do see, like I said, folks in all types of relationships. So not just cis-het couples, but folks who may be polyamorous or have any other type of ethical non-monogamous situation. And then I also see individuals who may identify anywhere along the spectrums of gender and sexuality, and they want a therapist who they don't have to explain their whole life to. Or their perspective. And so they're not coming to me. Like, they may not have issues with gender dysphoria, but they may have anxiety. Now, the gender stuff comes up, it's related to it, but that's not the main thing they're coming to me for. They just want a therapist to discuss their anxiety. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that just experience is trying to find people. Because for a while, I was like, I'm not talking to anybody. And then I did. But I had that kind of scary. So in my head, my like scary fantasy was that I was going to run into a white woman who was probably going to just like tear me up emotionally, unknowingly, maybe because she didn't understand, all the things. And that didn't all the way happen, but I did end up going to someone who was so interested in me, but not in a way that was it was like, oh, wow, you're so,
Oh, that's frustrating.
Ooh,
that's
wow.
frustrating.
And she's like, I can't see you. This is short term, and I want to send you to someone else. But as she was writing down the name, she's like, this lady sees she sees River North clients. River North is like a really rich area. She was like, she only sees River North clients, so she'd be really interested in seeing you. And I was like, oh. And then I ran away.
Yeah. It's a lot of interesting therapists out there, which keeps me working. I'm like, and then like myself, it's been challenging to find a good therapist. People don't return calls or whatever. And then St. Louis is a big small town. Everybody knows everybody, and so it can be challenging to find. Good. Yeah.
Do you think when you say that you're a therapist, do you ever tell them that you're a therapist as well?
Yeah. Because it's a part of who I am, and I have to be, especially if I'm requiring or expecting my clients to be honest about who they are, what they're doing. I can't fake the funk when I go to therapy, so I have to, this is what I do. Yeah.
Hard.
It can be a challenge. But therapy ain't easy. It's some heavy lifting I require of my clients, but I'm there with them, right?
Yeah.
Therapy is hard work.
So what are some Well, okay. So one thing I really want to talk about is, well, what do you think? What do you think about certain kinks? Like, what do you think about? What are your opinions on age play?
Age play, as long as they're consenting adults and able to legally consent, do what you do. Like, I'm not going to, my girl, Rafaela Smith-Fialo says, I'm not going to ill your eye. Other people say, yeah. Other people say, I'm not going to yuck your yum. You know.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Do your thug thizzle. What's between and amongst consenting adults who are old enough to legally consent? Do your thug thizzle.
Okay, see, that's the question, as I always have, is that, okay, so between two consenting adults in a safe space, what is there a borderline between what you can do and what you shouldn't do or something? But I'm like, no, right? Because you would set that with the other person. Right,
and the thing that I love about BDSM that a lot of people don't do who are outside of that community is that they generally and often clearly set boundaries before anything happens. And they say, this is what I'm willing to do. This is what I'm not willing to do. These are my hard limits, et cetera. And so I think in establishing those boundaries, and making sure, like I said, everyone consents.
Yeah. Then, right? Okay, so that's that's a license for me to go, but it's just like, okay, that makes sense to me because, I mean, you cannot be into something. But if it's two consenting adults doing something, then I don't see what the problem is.
Right. Because race play ain't for your girl, but
I was going to ask you about that.
but for other people, like, they're into that. Now, I will say, though, like, there's a difference. What I understand, specifically from Black folks who participate in race play, there's a difference between race play and abuse or, like, people being fetishized. And so making sure that whoever you're playing with understands it and respects you, and that, there's appropriate power exchange in that dynamic. And all of those things need to be fleshed out before you go there, right? Mm-hmm. But, that ain't for me, but I'm not going to yuck nobody's yum. So.
Yes. I love that. What are some sexual rituals that I guess because we kind of sort of talked about some things you can do for single folks, but yeah, what are some sexual rituals that you often like talk about or try and get people to do? Or
yeah, so I just did a workshop with a few other amazing therapists called The Spark. It's a virtual brunch series for couples, and within my workshop, I talked about creating spiritual rituals for intimacy. And the rituals I discussed specifically talked about incorporating spirituality into your sexual practices. And even though I come from a Christian perspective, I introduced ways that could be included for anyone, whether they jive with organized religion or not. And those different things included setting intentions or praying, creating the atmosphere.
You can pray.
Listen. Not only can you pray, but you can also create a sacred space for sex. And then additionally, I talked about different scriptures related to...
what?
Listen, have you ever read Song of Solomon and Song of Songs?
No, I'm writing this. I'm writing this down.
Listen. So it is a song, and the thing about it is that it's not really preached from a lot, but it is kind of, if you read it, it reads as like a conversation or dialogue between two lovers. And it's thought to be between King Solomon, but I don't know, and an unnamed woman called the Shulamite woman. That's who she's referred to. And one thing that I love to point out is that she's a dark-skinned Black woman. And so you have this person, presumably a man, talking about how beautiful she is, how he loves her, how he wants her, and she's expressing her desire. And they're just going back and forth talking about how much they want each other and what they're going to do and how they did it. Like, so at the end of, listen, this is in the Bible. So at the end of chapter 4, there's and I can't quote it, I don't know it exactly, but the story is she's basically saying, come into my garden and eat of its fruits. Beginning of chapter 5, old boy was like, oh, I went into the garden, I ate the fruit, and it was delicious.
Wow.
So, yeah, right? But we're not taught that. We taught keep your legs closed. Mm-hmm. But I wish that we would talk about that. But anyway, the 3 different ways that I talked about incorporating spirituality into your sexual practices. Those 3 things. So you can use those to create a ritual for closeness or even for yourself. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be scripture. It could be a poem. It could be affirmations that you say to yourself. Like one quick thing, because they don't have to be long, drawn out things. But your intention, if you're not someone who prays, your intention could be, I'm going to experience pleasure tonight or today, whatever time it is. And have that be the main focus of your play session.
That is so, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Because, just like a separate personal thing. I never know what I'm allowed to like really like ask God for, really like pray for sometimes. I know you're supposed to, whatever. I got my own thing with that because I'm kind of like, well, if you already know what's in place, why do I have to ask? It's already planned out. But then, so I didn't even realize that you could pray in a any sort of sexual sense or any sort of that is amazing. That's like wow, that is awesome.
I remember years ago on Facebook, I asked friends like, what are different things that you do incorporate spirituality into sexuality. And I remember one person who's a married woman. She has a husband, cis-het relationship, and she said that she often prays that she's able to provide pleasure for her husband before they have sex. I was like, okay.
That's interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so think about like the intimacy if you were to pray with your partner. To pray together, that you are able to both experience with each other. We talked earlier how our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit, so we just go into church.
Oh, that's kind of hot, though.
Ain't it? Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. What would you say? Okay, so self-care. Everyone's talking about self-care, but what is like, how do you know the borderline between treating yourself and like excessiveness or maybe just going too far with the treating yourself?
Yeah. So I love the quote from Audre Lorde, who is my birthday twin. I have some amazing birthday twins, by the way. Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison, February 18th. Nice. But anyway, Audre Lorde has this quote from regarding self-care, and she's saying that it's not just self-indulgence, but really, and I'm not going to try to say the quote exactly because I'm going to mess up her words. Typically, when we're living in a society that denies our humanity, so to take time aside to really care for yourself is a revolutionary act. It's an act of political warfare, right? So in taking that perspective, thinking about how self-care is not always treating yourself. It's not always bubble baths. Sometimes self-care is sitting down and making sure you paid your bills on time. Sometimes self-care is, dusting them baseboards as I look at my baseboards and I need to, wipe them down. But it is really taking care of self. So how can you make sure that you don't teeter on that line of like what's inappropriate.
Yeah.
I think really just being honest about what you're able to handle, being honest about your priorities. So if your self-care is, I'm going to treat myself shopping, cool. Did you pay your rent? So like really prioritizing those things and really thinking, like I said, self-care is it's not all bubble baths, although they're great, but it's also doing those things that we don't necessarily enjoy doing, but they really are caring for ourselves, right? So.
Oof, yeah. Ooh. I'm like, that kind of hit me.
I hear you. I'm preaching to myself.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about shows for a little bit because, I want to talk about shows real quick because since I'm in here watching all this stuff, I watched a lot of Married to Medicine, or not Married to Medicine, but Married at First Sight. And there's a therapist who has this YouTube channel where he like reacts to the certain clips or whatever. And keyword seems like it's trauma. And for me, trauma always seems like, I don't know, that word just kind of freaks me out. But his point is that like everybody has their own kind of trauma or is maybe repeating some things or, I guess what's the question? I guess is all trauma bad? Or do you have to really delve deep into everything that has ever happened to you? What if there are some things that happen to you, but you don't really want to delve into? You're fine with that part, or you settled it. Or is that true? Or are you just telling yourself you settled it? That was a lot, but.
No, I got you. I'm following. I think that is something that really depends on the person. There is a difference between really being settled with how things are and moving from it, and burying something so that you don't have to deal with it. So are you engaging in other things to distract you from the problem? And the problem is still there. Like I hate doing laundry, right?
Yeah.
And my laundry is done now. But at one point, it was a mountain of clothes that I needed to get through. It was still sitting there, even though I'm going to go clean this. I'm going to do this. But it was still sitting there. Have I done my laundry?
Ooh.
You know what I mean? And so, like, it really depends on the person. Because like I said, every situation affects people in various different ways. But if it's a pile of laundry that's starting to stink, like eventually the whole house is going to stink. Like you can close the door,
right?
But the funk is going to seep through.
Right. No, that's true.
So it really just depends. I see you, Keith. Yeah. It depends. It depends on the person. So, because some people, like I said, they can experience something and they feel settled with how it was and they don't need to go back to it. But some other people, it still pops up in different situations, how they relate with other people, and they may try to deny that it's connected. But sometimes when you get to the root of it, it's like, nah, it's because ABC happened, and that's okay. But let's deal with it so it can be forever done.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. I like what you were saying about, because for me it's the dishes, and sometimes I'll do everything else. I'll clean the bathroom, but I won't do the dishes until the point where it stinks. And then the whole house stinks. And then it's like, oh God, now I got to deal with this. That's a good way to think about like your emotions. And I'm gonna have him take that.
Go ahead.
So you're a therapist. What's if you can give your opinion, what's some BS advice that you see floating out there all the time that you're just like, people, please don't do that?
So, a lot. One thing, it's a lot. But the first thing that popped up was the idea that I see a lot. That's another one. Okay, I'll stick with, you see I'm kind of going all over the place. But the idea that you have to love yourself completely and whole before you can be loved.
Yes! So that's not, what do you think about that?
I think that we are often, we're often broken and mending. So I have a friend who's a songwriter, and he wrote this song called Broken But Mending. And he said there are broken people, there are mending people, and there are broken people who are pretending that they're whole. And I was like, oh, let me lock that away. Shout out to CJ. But yeah, I think about how we have different seasons where we may not love ourselves completely that day or that month or whatever. Does that disqualify us from receiving love? Does that keep us?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Like, yes.
Yeah, because I don't think it does. I think that we present in a lot of different ways. Just like the whole idea of that song by Goody Mob, you're my sister, my friend, something. You got to respect yourself before I can. I can't stand it because I'm thinking your and it's by CeeLo, who is trash. But your idea of someone's respect of themselves shouldn't determine whether you treat them with respect. You know what I mean? Because respectability politics, right?
Yes.
That this idea that a woman should look this way and wear this and carry herself that way, should that determine how someone treats her? Absolutely not. And so adding that same principle to the idea of, you got to love yourself completely before anybody can. We have different seasons where we might be in broken places. And that doesn't disqualify us from being worthy of receiving love.
Yeah, that is like spread so much. That's in everything. Like, if you can't, because I love RuPaul. I watch Drag Race, and so it's always, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell someone else is going to love you, whatever. So always hearing that, and for me, I guess maybe taking that maybe too literal and being like, oh God, so I guess I'm not deserving yet because I'm just, I haven't done the work. And I guess I don't, and thinking like, oh gosh, if I don't ever do the work, I guess I'm just not ever going to be qualified enough to be with anybody. So it's
yeah. Because So here we are. Yeah. And like I said, like I think about, and I reference my husband's passing a lot because that broke me. Like I was broken and open and all of that, and not in a position where I could really give a lot of love, but I had so many people who were loving on me, and so I just think about how we have those different seasons where we need someone to pour into us. Yes. And then we'll have seasons where we're able to pour into others.
I feel seen. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. I think recognizing the seasons and being like the biggest thing I'm trying to learn is just being patient with myself. Like it's okay. You take your time to do stuff because it's just you, Yeah. And also lots of stuff, boundaries. I'm learning how to, communicate, which is kind of like a hard thing for me sometimes. Oh, in your opinion, I'm like, okay, 2 more questions. How do you handle jealousy? Because I feel like jealousy is, logically, I know it's not useful, but it's something I still feel. So I'm not really sure what to do with it. And that's
Yeah. So, remember how I was talking about mindfulness and how one thing that I do that helps me is being aware and acknowledging those feelings that aren't comfortable for me to experience, including jealousy. Although it's not necessarily useful, it's there. Yeah. And so should I judge myself for these feelings? Absolutely not. Any feeling that you have, any emotion that you have is valid. You should... But with mindfulness, I think about it like, have you ever sat and watched the clouds go by? So So when you see the cloud, you don't necessarily judge it. It's like, oh, that cloud looks like Elvis.
Yeah.
Oh, that cloud looks like a banana. I mean, it just is what it is, and it passes. And so that's how I think about some of the uncomfortable emotions, specifically with jealousy. I don't judge it. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this way. Is there something that's causing me to feel this way? Or is it something that I'm just kind of insecure about?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's rooted in my insecurity, then we can deal with that. Now, if something is happening, then I can deal with that in a different way. But it's kind of like giving myself space to experience the uncomfortable emotion, not judging the emotion, and not judging myself for feeling it.
Yeah. that takes practice.
A lot of practice. It ain't easy.
Man. One of the things I saw you mention a show, I think on a podcast or something else you were doing. And I've been watching this show too, and I don't know. I guess as Black people, I'm not really sure what. It's kind of like, what are we supposed to do? Like, what the fuck? What are we supposed to do? Watching Lovecraft Country,
that is my jam.
And I watch it thinking, this is old school. This is like how it. But then a lot of things remind me of the same stuff today, which just blows my mind, and it makes me think, oh no, like, what's going on? What are we supposed to do? This is like ridiculous, and it's like, I mean, but then at the same time, we are so freaking strong. We're so strong mentally to have to go through this and to like, it's just, it could be so much sometimes and overwhelming. And I wonder how people back then, like, because people back then were still getting married. They were still doing things. They were still going to school. They were still doing shit. And so part of me goes, okay, well, if they were still doing stuff, you can still do things too. You don't have to let the fear, like, but boy.
We compartmentalize very well, right?
Yeah.
We have the ability to experience a myriad of emotions at the same time and to be able to have a lot of different experiences at the same time. I think about how on Juneteenth this year, I got incredibly emotional. And I sat and I lit a white candle for the ancestors, and I prayed and I thanked God for them. And I said, I am a descendant of those who survived. And I'm often in gratitude of that because of the work that how they pushed through. That's how I'm still here. So I'm always honoring the ancestors, right? I was watching Lovecraft Country with my aunt. I just hit her to the show, and she was like, how do you think you would have been back then? I was like, I don't know if I would have made it.
Me either.
I don't know what, and but right now we are making it. And so going back to that quote from Audre Lorde, how self-care is an act of political warfare. Loving yourself, loving others, taking that time to still enjoy your life, that is revolutionary. So even though we have an entire system that denies our humanity, even though the world is saying you don't matter, taking a stand and say, yes, the hell I do. Black lives matter. All Black lives matter. And I am here, and I'm going to live, and I'm going to thrive, and I'm still going to enjoy whatever it is. Like, I'm excited about some blackberries I got in the refrigerator because they're sweet. And I'm just like, I am going to enjoy these blackberries. But like me enjoying something so simple when the world denies my humanity is a revolutionary act. So like, how do we survive? Like, not everything that we do is like not everyone is going to be a frontline protester, and that's perfectly okay. We all have different roles in the movement. We need lawyers. We need researchers. I see my girl C. Whitney V join. We need people who are going to be active in so many different ways. Finding your path, finding your role, and then also being able to enjoy things, like that's how we survive. That's how we make it through this.
That's a great point. Yes. Just being able to, enjoy simple things during all of this. But that is true. I never thought about it that like, well, yeah, we are living through it. So, you know.
Yeah, we're making it.
I just wonder, like, if you know, what as a whole, like what we are doing that we're not even maybe collectively, like what we're doing collectively that we're not maybe even talking about that we're doing to like self-soothe maybe. I wonder if there's anything, because I'm just constantly seeing all of those images on TV all the time for so long. I just wonder what that's going to do or what that is doing or like.
Now that's traumatic. That's definitely traumatic. And I think it's important to understand that it is necessary to unplug from that. Like even with Facebook, I think that there's a way that you can keep videos from automatically playing. And I did that several years ago, unfollowing certain accounts, because there are some people who they only post trauma, specifically trauma done to Black and brown people. So I unfollow them because I don't need to see that. Like, I know what's going on. I keep up with what's going on. But one thing that I've done, I don't really watch a lot of news because those images were too much. I listen to a lot of NPR. I catch up, you know, on different news websites. But for me, in order to stay informed with what was going on, like that's what worked for me. I know a lot of other people who have completely unplugged and they just don't watch TV or don't watch the news, and I get it.
That's where I was for a little bit, and then I started feeling guilty because I was like, okay, you can't just, you got to know what's going on, you know. But I just, it just makes me so angry, you know. It just is like, and even now, like, you know, I know that the way I am like palatable for white people. You know, I understand that in some ways, and that a lot of the spaces that I was in before this happened was a lot of white spaces. And now it's like, I just don't even want to, you know, it's making me, I don't even want to be around, it sounds bad. I just don't even want to be around them right now.
I feel you. I have very few white folks that I am around socially. Very few. But these are people who I know have the hard conversations with their family members who, when people came on my Facebook status is talking crazy, they came in and handled it. You know, like these are the folks that I choose to associate with. And then there's other people, you know, like folks from high school, because they wasn't friends. This is just people that I knew. You know, I've just learned that it is okay for me to unfriend and unfollow. It's okay to do that, because if it wasn't a real relationship, anyway, it was just like we was cool in high school,
and that's it.
Like, okay,
yes,
okay.
Well, this was awesome. Thank you for taking your time to talk to me. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you and check out your website? And
sure. So my Instagram and Twitter is at Sankofa Sex. It's SANKOFA Sex. And then my website is sankofasextherapy.com. And that's where you can find me on the interweb.
Yes, this was so great. One last thing, do you think you would have taken that potion? That did you see the fifth episode?
Yeah, I did, girl. I don't know. Well, okay. So now what I do realize, with the potion, it's not necessarily just to become a white woman, but it's to be able to do what you want.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, like, for her, because, like, that's what Christina said to her at the end of the episode. She was like, that's the thing of magic. It's not necessarily just to be another person, but it's to do whatever you want. Yeah. So, now, I don't know if I would necessarily want to be a white person, though. I am in love with my black ass. And so, I don't know. I don't know if I would. If you asked me maybe 10 years ago, my answer may have been different. But we on the cusp of 40, and you know, your mind changes about things.
Yes.
So, yeah. 29-year-old DeAndrea may have said, yeah. 39-year-old is like, I don't think so.
I think that would be really, really scary. I don't think... I just don't know. I don't think I would want to. It's, you know, whiteness itself is like a lot, and I don't think I could do that.
I think it's its own, specifically being a white woman. It has its own prison to a certain extent.
Yes.
Because what I noticed, and I know we almost out of time, but what I noticed with a lot of white women, they feel that because they have that proximity to whiteness, that's what will save them. But it's like, girl, no, it won't.
True. That is true. It won't. But yeah, I love that show. I love what they're doing with it. It's such a, I feel like it's an awesome way to, it's bringing, I don't know. I feel like it's bringing Black people into a lot of, because I feel like it doesn't trick you, but you think it's about one thing and then it's about like a million other things. Which I love. Have you seen I May Destroy You?
I haven't watched it yet. It's on my list. I know the subject matter, and I'm like gearing myself up to watch it. So
it's kind of intense. I had to take a couple of breaks in between the episodes because it was a lot going on, and it's based on a lot of the stuff that actually happened to her.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's, yeah. But anyway, man, this was great. I would love to have you on just to talk about freaking